Yemsayanlin's bustling night market in Yendo had specialties. Fangievian specialized in online betting, making people either rich or bankrupt overnight. The royal residence offered many dishes, making it hard to earn money entirely. Personal views on the alley at the entrance, rich in goods, but strict and unprofitable. Seeing the sun rising, Lydia murmured, "The living will come to the land soon. I want to see how Buvanho will react." In the police station of the western city of Gendo, a young man held a photo of Lydia and Ongten, sitting in front of the school gate, pointing at a girl. He lit the photo, murmuring, "The participants only know how to cause trouble but can't solve it. They're all giant children." Suddenly, the phone rang. He picked it up. On the other end was a young man. "Nantu and Nankyu have lost contact. We can't wait anymore. We need to control Buivanho before midnight tonight to end the event normally. But without the leaders, Nantu and Nankyu, it's difficult to control the situation. Nothing is certain in this world. Can Yendo overturn the sky?" Returning to the rooftop of the unfinished building, Lydium instructed Toto, "Fly high to monitor the situation in Yendo." It seems reluctant to leave. Lydium looked at the six-ring necklace around his neck. Finally, he nodded and flew up high. Looking at the green mark on the six-ring necklace, Lydium thought according to Dan On's words, when the necklace turned green, the green gem would have enough power to help Luongjia regenerate flesh and bones. Then Lydium went to the antique shop to sell Mao Tu Truong's small copper sword for 20,000. Then he went to Rolling Stone Audio to buy a disc recorder that Dan On liked. When Lydium returned to the duty room, it was 10 in the morning, facing Ongten. The atmosphere was a bit awkward. Finally, Ongten spoke first. "I was on duty yesterday." Before he could finish, Lydium quickly responded, "I was on duty too." They understood each other and took a sip of water from the same pitcher. Time passed, the sun was setting. Lydium dozed off in the duty room, suddenly awakened by the noise. Stepping outside, his eyes still squinting, Lydium said, "If you want to fight, do it outside. Don't stay in the school." The student looked at Lydium, cursed him, then left without paying attention to him. Lydium was furious, walking straight to the back of the student, hitting his back and sweeping his feet. The student fell to the ground. At that moment, the people around rushed towards Lydium, surrounding him. In Huangxin Park, Buivanho and Tiumon chatted happily. The girl didn't know she had become Buivanho's final target. Looking at Buivanho's handsome face, her heart felt like leaping out. Suddenly, a red beam pierced through the girl's neck, and her legs softened, falling into Buivanho's arms. Buivanho looked at the wound on the girl's neck. It was a tranquilizer gun. The park was now in panic. Buivanho looked around vigilantly. At that moment, a smiling young man stepped forward. In this world, there are always those who consider themselves the center of the world. They don't say it, but subconsciously see themselves as the main character. Unlike children, these people are very capable, even emotionally intelligent compared to the majority. But their problem is a lack of responsibility. The young man's smile gradually faded, his eyes showing contempt as he looked at the girl in Buivanho's arms. "Your cruel tactics are disgusting." Buivanho pretended to stroke the girl's face, laughing coldly. "A small quantity doesn't make a nobleman virtuous." Suddenly, gunfire echoed, birds scattered in chaos. The scene shifted back to Lydium. A group of thugs were still searching for him. Lydium was hiding in a tree, one hand covering the wound on his chest. The system reported that he was hit by a special bullet, causing him to enter a special state where wound healing speed decreased by 500%. Lydium silently thought that without Tiu Toyat's support, this bullet would have taken half his life. He had just escaped from them when he unwittingly stumbled into another trap. At that moment, a Toto bird flew over, its voice echoing from it, reporting that there was trouble near Huangxin Park, with gunshots and explosions. Lydium gritted his teeth, enduring the pain as he slowly removed the bullet. His whole body was drenched in cold sweat. "Toto, you go and check what's happening and report back to me," Lydium said, looking down at the group of people beneath the system's warning sign. The system warned him that there was a hunter among them. Suddenly, a rock fell, alerting a man who looked up. A demon swooped down from the sky. its black claws digging into the man's face. The man jumped back, then pulled out 2 guns and fired. The demon was hit several times and gradually disappeared. Diem suddenly appeared behind the man, wielding Honglong fiercely. The man reacted quickly, dodging Diem's attack and then jumping back, aiming his 2 guns directly at Diem. At that moment, Diem firmly twisted his body, thrusting Honglong straight up from the man's groin. The man fell silent immediately, and the system's voice sounded. Unfortunately, he didn't receive his inheritance. Looking at the dead body, Diem thought that the gunman probably wasn't alone. He picked up the man's gun, remaining vigilant and looking around. At that moment, Toto flapped its wings and flew back beside Diem. Listening to the report, Diem remained silent. Suddenly, a piece of glass over a meter long fell from above. Diem quickly dodged to the side, looking up to see a trembling girl standing by the window. Her arms were cut by glass, blood flowing profusely. About 10 Toto birds rushed into the school building, beginning their search for someone. Suspiciously, Diem felt a strange force pulling at his mind. He was on guard, silently thinking that it wanted to take over his consciousness. Just then, Diem felt a Toto bird disappear on the 4th floor. Diem pulled the window curtain and jumped to the 4th floor. He stood on the curtain, watching the girl pulling up her pants in shock, stepping back when she saw Diem jump into the women's restroom. Diem threw Honglong at the wall in front of her. The girl looked at the Toto bird's body on the ground. Diem knew Toto birds were very cautious and agile, so they couldn't be easily trampled by ordinary people. Diem paid no attention to the girl. Feeling frozen with fear, he pushed open the adjacent door, and another girl looked at him, blushing and stammering. "Oh my God!" Her scream echoed throughout the schoolyard. 10 or so male students appeared at the restroom door. Seeing this, Diem fired a shot at the wall, causing the students to panic and scatter. Then, he aimed the gun at the girl in the restroom and said softly, "You're quite fun, aren't you?" Meanwhile, Diem's rampage in the women's restroom spread throughout the school. Hearing the students' accounts, Ongtan hurried over, fearing that Diem's trouble might involve him. The school's leadership also arrived at the restroom door, advising Diem to leave, but he ignored them, looking at the trembling girl crying. Diem glanced at the girl standing at the door, seeing the same look in her eyes as the girl in the restroom. He deliberately moved his finger away from the gun's trigger and whispered, "We're just playing, aren't we? Both you and her want to kill me." Before he could finish speaking, the girl at the door drew Honglong and lunged at Diem's neck. He bent down to dodge, stepping back several steps and firing at the girl, but she dodged all the bullets. At that moment, the girl who had been kneeling in the restroom suddenly stood up, dizzying Diem. The system faced the power of Mot Koi directly. Diem shook his head vigorously to stay alert, looking at the 2 girls who were on guard. Diem knew this was their true form. The sun was setting and Wonsim Park was eerily quiet. Vosen followed the scent of fresh blood, discovering the place where Nantho was concentrated, a scene of devastation with corpses everywhere. Looking at the last survivor, he asked softly, "With such modest abilities, how come the man in front of me has a hole in his stomach, bleeding profusely?" Behind him, supporting an unconscious girl, Vosen muttered something really ugly. "Our tiger is different from you. We, the participants with inheritance, depend on the intensity of our fruits. We are part of the fruit, so we can help you clean up better. Our forces are enough to deal with low-level participants like you." Unexpectedly, the tables have turned. Before he could finish his sentence, the man collapsed to the ground. Vosen raised his hand to his chest and stopped moving. Vosen searched for the holy token in his body, but suddenly a stream of water wrapped around his right hand. Without saying a word, Vosen immediately launched an attack. The water gradually took on a form. Chuvo saw that he couldn't steal the token and immediately retreated 66 meters, revealing himself. Just then, a dragon Dao flew towards Vosen's neck from behind. Surprisingly, a bright red sphere blocked the blade. Seeing the failed theft, Chu Tam jumped down beside him. Chuvo said to Vosen, "Hand over the items to us to use. Once we're done, we'll return them. If you don't give them, we'll fight for them until you do." As soon as he finished speaking, Vo and Chiu Tam rushed to attack Vosen, but Vosen suddenly called a halt. The dead feel nothing, so even if they guessed wrong, it's not considered an offense. Then he waved his right hand, and the dead body beside him burst into flames. Watching the body burn into ashes, Vosen felt relieved. Buivanho had indeed escaped, not by cunning but by sheer luck. At this moment, Vosen waved his hand to Chuvo and Chiu Tam, signaling them to check if they had taken anything from him. Meanwhile, Lydium put a green pill in his mouth and added 2 more dead bodies behind him. With a cold face, he walked out of the restroom. The system's voice sounded, announcing that he had received the inheritance of Mak Ko Chi Chi Thui Man. The students and teachers in the hallway trembled and sat down on the floor when they saw Lydium. He noticed Ongten also sitting on the floor, trying to pull him up, but Ongten recoiled in fear. Lydium sighed, knowing he couldn't stay in the school any longer. He jumped out of the 4th floor window and then headed towards Hongsan Park. The scene shifted back to Hongsan Park. Chiu Tam transformed into Min Trach Trifui, dodging the red and yellow beans. The red bean was named Namdo, and the yellow one was named Trumthan. His sword transformed into countless blades, cutting Namdo in half. Namdo exploded with a loud bang, turning into red dust that scattered in the sky. The red dust fell and pierced Chiu Tam's clothes, causing her pain. She formed a vortex of water with her sword to block the attack. The sword turned into a black water stream, wrapping around Trumthan. After more than 10 rounds, Chiu Tam's black water stream gradually depleted. Vosen was as relaxed as if he were strolling in the park, looking at the two of them leisurely. "How can you take anything from me like this?" Hearing this, Chiu Tam realized that the holy token was just a tool of destruction. If they couldn't take it, they could destroy it. The sword pointed straight ahead, with the engraved image on the sword's handle transforming into a small green and white snake that flew towards Vosen. Gradually, 2 horns appeared on its head, and scales fell off. In the blink of an eye, the snake turned into a green and white dragon coiling around Vosen. It turned into countless iron chains, locking him in. Chiu Tam gripped the long Man Quan Dao tightly, her green hair fluttering. Behind her appeared the figure of a mythical beast with the head of a goat, the tail of a tiger, the body of a lion, and the double legs, all white like jade. It gathered 7,000 white emotional notes from all living beings, demonstrating the supreme authority. From ancient times, the vitality of creatures has been transformed by the soul. There are 1,500 types of disorders. The white mass turned into a cloud. Sometimes it was a tiger, sometimes a dragon, sometimes a bird, sometimes a whale in the sea. A stream of benevolent energy spread from Chiu Tam, and she said coldly, "How does the pinnacle of Thapto feel? This cloud is like a deadly blow to the top 10 participants. Your thighs may be twisted and your neck may be bent." She raised her sword, swiping it horizontally and chopping directly towards Vosen, who was trapped inside. In an instant, a dark figure descended from above, its sharp claws directly grabbing the holy token in Vosen's hand. Vosen felt the holy token firmly held. Toto smiled, flapping its wings and flying up. At that moment, the iron chains locking Vosen broke apart. Vosen grabbed Toto's claws tightly, asking why he was in such a hurry. "Stay a little longer and play some more," then jerked its wings down sharply. Vosen threw Toto forcefully towards Chiu Tam. The boiling cloud collided with Toto's back, blasting her several meters away. Her spine and wing roots were torn, revealing a skeleton. Blood soaked into the ground. Just now, Vosen grabbed Toto's claws, then smirked coldly, throwing her into the cloud behind Chiu Tam. There was a loud explosion, and Chiu Tam was thrown several meters away. Vosen coldly picked up the holy token, looking at Toto's heavily wounded state, laughing contemptuously. "Thapto's tiger may be powerful, but Toto's mind is lacking." Vosen looked at his broken wrist, trying to escape from the seal, the flow of lamb water, healing the wound in just a few breaths. His wrist had completely healed. He stepped past Toto, muttering, "Except for the 10 types of pseudo-inheritors, all other spiritual creatures have a high position. The Chai Ling monsters do not exist, and the Chi Trong monsters rank second." The greedy dragons do not develop their stomachs. Looking into the distance, he saw the development of his eyes, developing in the same way. Backtrash demons and gods dominate all living things, developing moral formulas. Vosen approached Chutam, ignoring Chuvo standing in front of her as if she didn't exist. When Chuvo was about to reach out, Vosen grabbed his head, slamming him to the ground with all his strength. Despite Chuvo's strength, he couldn't resist and could only let Vosen grip him tightly. Vosen eagerly looked at Chutam. "I'm very interested in your inheritance." Chutam's lips trembled, gritting her teeth. "My brothers Hyamin and your Backtrash, the top two inheritances, couldn't defeat them. Low-level inheritances are just ordinary strategists." At this moment, Chuvo was slammed to the ground, saying that they didn't need the holy token anymore. "Two of us, I still have a few precious items and inheritances to offer. Please spare us." Vosen shook his head, throwing a black chess piece. "I only need the Backtrash inheritance. Two of you can go. I'll only say it once, don't be ignorant." Looking at the chess piece on the ground, Chutam hoarsely agreed. Seeing that Chutam had agreed, Vosen excitedly picked up a wine bottle to drink. Chuvo spoke up. "Hyamin can control water and blood. I've tried to control water easily, but blood is very difficult. Even the flowing blood from a wound is difficult to control. If Hyamin's blood contains impurities, as long as I pay the corresponding price." Before he could finish his sentence, Chuvo inserted his finger into his eye, gouging out his eyeball. At this moment, Vosen's right eye swelled up, blood gushing out. Chuvo spoke in a deep voice. "I'll say it one last time. Let Hyamin go and we'll release you." Vosen tightened his grip, intending to kill him. "I've warned you before, don't be ignorant." Suddenly, Vosen felt a sharp pain all over his body. His vision shifted in front of Chutam, where a silver beast rushed forward. Only seeing Diem riding the battle chain sword, stabbing straight at Vosen. He pushed him forward, and then a tail strike from the battle chain sword struck heavily. Vosen pushed him forward, and the large trees behind began to break apart. Vosen pressed both hands on the sword's head, staring intently at Diem. Diem chewed on a carrot, glancing at the GA seal. Suddenly, a wave of tears pushed both Diem and the battle chain sword away. He summoned the giant tiger head, stabilizing his figure. In midair, he turned and slashed straight at Vosen. The lamb water enveloped Vosen, and his wounds began to heal. At the same time, the figure of a cat general appeared behind Vosen, its sharp claws pointing upwards. Its red and green buttocks protruded from its pants, the green lamb belt, and the five-colored scale shirt behind the cat. It noted that Naman had a cat general shrine, with a mysterious cat-headed body. The people passing by would often pray respectfully. The protective aura of Vosen's light key could not penetrate. Seeing that he couldn't attack, Diem withdrew and landed steadily. Then he looked at Vosen and said softly, "Thapto is mad." Vosen also laughed with Diem, then raised his right hand, glowing with red light. A drop of fresh blood fell, and the system reported a surge in your bloodthirsty combat damage, increasing the damage this time to 0% of total damage. The mental state debuff is ineffective for 1 hour. Vosen smiled and said, "A double-edged sword must be used carefully." "You're right." Diem didn't care and called it heavy avoidance, just forced physical contact. But it could also be affected by other inherited skills. "Thank you for reminding me to be awake," said Diem. Meanwhile, as the two talked, Chutam helped Chuvo stand up and tried to escape. Vosen coldly said, "Can you leave?" Suddenly, the cat general pulled out a white flag from its back and threw it into the air. Immediately, 7 to 8 white iron chains appeared, crisscrossing and surrounding the two. The white iron chains glowed with a purple lamb light. Chuvo couldn't believe it and muttered, "How could he have such a low-level strategist inheritance and an assassin treatment that perfectly seals and blocks? It's so powerful that it makes people desperate." Diem lowered the tiger's head spear and read the system's message. The cat general's enhanced farewell flame increased water, earth, and eye defenses, as well as enhancing the golden enlightenment by 52% to the pinnacle of stone sculpture. Diem let go, and 4 golden talismans appeared in front of him. Heavy crane, Flying Phoenix, Bu Chi Hu, Unspoken Chi Blood Luan, Moon-Shaped Chi. The shadow of Cohost Yu gradually appeared behind Lydium, and the system reported that you had consumed an additional 35% enlightenment to overcome the first growth stage of Cohost Yu. The success rate this time is 100%. Finally, you have completed the first growth stage of Cohost Yu. The current enlightenment of Cohost Yu is 47%, increasing damage and explosion speed by 470%. You have spent 35% enlightenment to grow. Evaluate this growth phase. Highest level of destruction expertise. According to the percentage ratio, it is 93% martial arts. Activating a hidden inherited skill does not consume enlightenment. A hidden inherited skill is a passive skill based on the percentage ratio of energy consumption when activated. When using a continuous skill like Yem Xuan Lan, Cohost Yu will sequentially strike, but the damage is only 47% of the previous attack. It is also affected by the enhancement of the 9 elements and the Ti-Ka. When Cohost Yu hits the target, there is a possibility of freezing and causing damage. Then Lydium directly used the generated flame of Qianfeng, the only useful skill received from Cohost Yu, to create Lam Wind Protection. Lydium swung his sword, activating the hidden skill, and the tiger head spear stabbed straight into Vosen's chest twice. Cohost Yu's eyes behind Lydium slightly opened, and a white feather flew out. Vosen tightly grasped the green iron chain like a staff to block the tiger head spear. Cohost Yu swung his fingers, and the white feather shot quickly towards Vosen's solar plexus. The red chain immediately intercepted in front of Vosen, and a loud explosion ensued as the white feather was blown away. The tiger head bit onto the red and green chains, entangling them tightly. The white feather continuously shot towards Vosen with a cold wind, freezing the ground. Vosen's face looked grim. He calculated that Lydium's expertise in Qi manipulation was 90%, and his martial arts mastery was up to 93%. Previously, Lydium had average strength above Thapdo's level. It was the first time he had encountered such a sharp opponent since his growth phase. Vosen thought it was unfortunate to encounter such a sharp opponent. Suddenly, the green chain jabbed into Lydium's wrist. Lydium grimaced and took a few steps back, pointing at Vosen's face. Vosen felt the blood flowing on his face, and the system showed that the blood clot had not yet exploded. The battle shifted, and the two collided with each other. The tiger head spear collided heavily with the green iron chain, which shattered into pieces, and the cat general's body behind Vosen also broke. Vosen's face turned cold as he looked at Lydium, activating a temporary enhancement on the tiger head, with a sharpness level of 100, capable of penetrating weapons. Every time a weapon collided, it would check for success. If successful, it would destroy weaker weapons. Seeing the tiger head charging, Vosen panicked and quickly pulled out the Namle chain to block himself. He didn't dare to engage in close combat with Lydium anymore. In an instant, Vosen swung 4 iron chains to attack Lydium. The lamb chain healed, the gold chain blocked the red fire chain, and the green chain formed a weapon. Each chain released its own beauty and power, almost with independent consciousness, comparable to Lydium's tiger head. At this moment, Chu Tam, locked in chains, was also surprised. Although he lacked the white flag to lock her with the weapon in hand, he could compete evenly with the 4 big flags, as long as there were 5 or 6 weapons, with a maximum of no more than 10 weapons. He would find a gap in the rotation of Yem Xuan Lan's remaining chains. Lydium's eyes flashed with a cold light, and his spear moved faster. Finally, he found a gap in the rotation of Yem Xuan Lan's chains and charged straight at Vosen. At this point, Vosen knew he couldn't avoid it. The tiger head thrust into him, pushing him back several meters before stopping. The wounds piled up, and the healing lamb water slowed down. Vosen looked up at Lydium, his eyes showing a terrifying aura. He muttered, "Not bad, you're quite courageous." The tiger head swallowed its tongue and charged at Vosen, using Vosen's lamb key as a defense. The golden light flashed in front of Vosen, blocking the tiger head spear, while behind the cat general, 4 flags lit up simultaneously. Lydium panicked and wanted to withdraw the spear to avoid it, but the golden chain stuck to the tiger's head, preventing Diem from retracting the spear. Seeing Diem unable to retract the spear, Vosen knew that it was too late to run now. Suddenly, Kohochju's wings trembled and a feather shot out. The feather flew towards Vosen, but he sensed death from it, making him shiver. Vosen didn't hesitate anymore. The white chain bound Chiu Vo and Chiu Tam and began to move. Electric sparks shot straight towards Diem's back. He quickly pulled out his spear from the golden chain, retreating backwards. The spear aimed straight at the chain, which stuck to the tiger's head. The tip of the spear stabbed straight into the hole where the chain stuck. Diem sighed with regret. The feather just now contains the hidden tiger's jumping tiger. If Vosen dares to block with his body, will suffer a series of damaging blows. His bombardment. Vosen yanked the white chain. Purple and white electricity rushed straight to Diem, but was blocked by his iron body. The two people were stuck in a deadlock. Vosen looked at Chiu Vo and Chiu Tam. Run away angry, the battle with Diem created an opportunity for the other two people to escape. Vosen's eyes flashed. Tia said angrily to Diem, "If you don't come back and take care of that demon bird Kia, it will probably die." Diem knew Vosen was right, but I'm afraid he'll make fun of me, decided to quickly deal with him, then return to save Toto. Later, Diem used his right hand to lift the spear and press down. Complete preparation. Yem Cyanel saw that Diem was unmoved. Vosen's anger rose. 4 flags behind the cat general's back, simultaneously emitting dazzling light. Diem and Vosen rushed into each other again. 4 colors of blue water and white-yellow light entwine. Suddenly something happened. The little girl hiding in the dark suddenly appeared. Beautiful face shattered, revealing a pair of golden glasses with 4 blessings. Buivanho's peachy personality appeared next to the two people. Seeing that Buivanho both understand each other, Diem causes Day to push away the holy decree. Vosen is also not bothered. His goal is still to pass on the backtracked lineage. This time I forgive you. If we meet again, you won't be able to escape. If there was no emergency, he thought he could win. Why did two people leave threats to surpass each other? Diem ran towards Toto Vosen and chased Theo Chiu Tam. Buivanho was startled. Initially, he intended to take advantage of the two people's duel, but stabbed Diem from behind, kill immediately. But the two escaped each other gently deceive. I think so. Many pieces of paper appeared on Buivanho's hand, engraved with strange ancient characters. He threw it aggressively towards Vosen. Vosen spat out a mouthful of blood. The cat general's fur on his back stood up. Vosen grimly endured the pain, using the golden chain to wrap around his fist, and punched Buivanho in the face. The shattered glass shards flew into Buivanho's flesh, blood splattering everywhere. And Vosen was not spared either. The paper pieces pierced his wound, causing excruciating pain. He gritted his teeth, pushing Buivanho away. Suddenly, clarity dawned on Vosen as he pieced his thoughts together. He exclaimed, "Well done, Diem. Well done, Buivanho. You two really played your cards well and fooled everyone." After speaking, he immediately ran towards Chiu Tam, listening to the sounds behind him. Diem watched as Buivanho approached, gripping the tiger head spear across his chest, ready to attack at any moment. Suddenly, Lut Van Kim sparkled green, and a red maple leaf fell. Danamong stood solemnly before Diem, seemingly under pressure from Danamong. Buivanho extended both hands, laughing, then picked up the sacred order from the ground and turned to Diem. "At midnight at the 13 Lang Gate, I'll be waiting for you," he said before leaving. Diem carried Toto beside him, with Danamong by his side. This time, Toto escaped death thanks to her. Danamong remained silent, looking ahead. In this world, some strange energies were suppressed. If they changed locations, they would lose their mobility. Furthermore, they couldn't suppress those individuals now. Diem also wasn't in great shape. Toto was severely injured. This was the first time using the hidden arrow technique, consuming a lot of energy, and even eating many big apples couldn't make up for it. Yem Sui and Line fought for 12 hours straight, but didn't gain much. The wanderers appearing in Huamsan were not simple. They were likely the strongest in this Diem Phu event. Chiu Tam may have failed before, but he lost to overwhelming power like rain. The peak battle of the 9 Dong Chuvo had limited capabilities, but Puivanho's decisive actions showcased his truly powerful and unpredictable nature. Vosin unintentionally exuded a domineering aura, shocking with his sinister schemes. Suddenly, both stopped under the light. A man standing with a cigarette, looking at Diem and Danimong, speaking softly. 8 stories, Puivanho kneeling before the large red gate. 2 stone statues on the sides, a general holding a sword, one hand empty. Puivanho placed his hand on the ground. Numerous small black characters flowed out like water, spreading around the stone statues. As time passed, Puivanho's face became paler, his ancient summoning skills draining him. Suddenly, a voice echoed from the stone statue's mouth, a figure about a yard tall beside it. Despite his low position, he dared to offend the emperor. Puivanho withdrew his hand, clasping his hands lightly. Trung Feng's fake tune of My Fortune's Fate. I pay my respects to you, sir. The situation is difficult, bothering you is unintentional. Please forgive me. Then, the stone statue asked him where Quach Tianlo was. Hearing the question, Puivanho calmly explained that his master, ancestor Nushin Loe, unexpectedly fell victim to treachery. Compared to the 5 insect Nushin Loe, his combat strength was inferior, even weaker. All aspects of his physical body would improve to a certain extent, but the coefficient was low, even lower for Ngushin Loe. When the awakening level increased, Ngushin Loe, unlike Maovu with individual goals or Ko-Lan with high-level stratagems, couldn't grow comprehensively. For example, at the same awakening level, Maovu's growth rate was 10 while the world's was 5, but the growth direction was comprehensive, while Ngu Tianloi only had Yem Xuan Lin. However, Nushin Loe was still very popular at Diem Phu, possibly due to its long-standing existence there. Since its birth, Nushin Loe naturally received scholars' favor in most cases. They could view high-level wanderers' notes, explore and experience them for free, even distort Diem Phu's abilities to a certain extent. The top inheritors of Ngushin Loe could indeed complete Diem Phu events, occupying a certain position. The sovereignty of the geographical class could play with the event's content and rules, upgrading to a third-class demon, granting privileges to newcomers. All followed this doctrine. Therefore, at the moment, most wanderers still had little knowledge of those strange oppressors. In fact, Puivanho, through the high-level wanderer's exploratory notes, knew the complexity of Inno's oppression objects, attracting living beings. At midnight, Fangiavian gambled on the holy, only using Mantho to attract, relying on Gushin Loe's advantage. Puivanho gradually rose to the forefront. After hearing Puivanho's words, the stone statue continued, "We've served the emperors for hundreds of years. Even the bones have rusted over time, but in your eyes, there's defiance with a sharp and pointed nose. Your ears droop down, reminiscent of the appearance of the great villain Nutrung. Your eyes are filled with bloodthirst. You've killed someone. The purple road contains resentment. You've done something against your conscience and morals. Moreover, it's not even been 5 days. Am I correct? In Huangsan Park, a man with a small knife looks worried. You're injured, aren't you, Diem?" Without answering, Diem was asked again, "Why did you find me?" The man with the knife raised a finger. A golden thread from his finger connected to Diem's arm, a real skill. Diem stretched his arm to pull, but it slipped. The man pulled his finger, the golden thread snapped, then he withdrew his hand, taking out a cigarette from his pocket and throwing it towards Diem. Puivanho told me about it. Now you've provoked him and become the target. I admit you're formidable, but it won't be easy, right? Diem showed interest, lighting a fire and speaking. So it seems like we have nothing to say. Who knows if we'll suddenly be stabbed with a knife? The man continued, "Just learned how to maintain cooperation, haven't you?" Diem took a breath and said, "Exactly. People naturally become acquainted with some compatible individuals during Diem Phu events. They cooperate happily once or twice, and suddenly, they have the idea of becoming teammates. Just by spending 200 Diem Phu points in the auction house, one can designate a wanderer as a temporary companion. However, forming a team in a clever way is not guaranteed for Diem Phu. It's simply for everyone to participate in the same event, ensuring that no one becomes hostile to each other. But the relationship between them is not guaranteed. For high-quality foreign objects to earn more points, Diem Phu raises the purchasing power limit. Unless the relationship between two individuals is deeply rooted, or it's a romantic relationship or siblinghood, otherwise, there will always be this reason or that reason leading to the team cracking. But maintaining cooperation is not like that. They absolutely trust each other. All events and rewards can be shared, and there can be comprehensive physical improvements. The most important thing is to maintain cooperation, facing Diem Phu events in a fleeing manner, without distinguishing between one side and the other, even when killing the last person. As long as the relationship between the survivors is maintained, it's considered the event completed. Maintaining cooperation can be trusted. After finishing, the man's finger held a gold embossed card. Using this card, cooperation can be maintained throughout a Diem Phu event, limited to 2 people. Lydian remained silent for a while, then asked, "So, how do I convince someone to agree to cooperate and maintain cooperation with me?" The man replied straightforwardly, "First of all, that object is very important to me, so I need you to spend 1,000 Diem Phu points for me. After confirmation, you can return and deliver it later. Next, you need to quickly break through the first inheritance peak, but I'm not entirely satisfied with your expertise. The 8 Yendo buildings of this incident are the key to my breakthrough. I need the help of someone. Finally, the next event I lead, you must listen to me." Lydian nodded with a smile at the man. "If I agree to your conditions, what will you do next?" The man took a strong drag of his cigarette and said, "Well, that's obvious. We'll flee. Of course, I'll have to ask, won't I?" Lydian smirked, raising both eyebrows evenly, his face serious. The man lit another cigarette with a match. "You probably know Nantho, right? He's under Diem Phu, responsible for arranging identities, providing action guidance, and even ending tasks. I'm not sure what Bui Van Ho obtained to interfere with Diem Phu events, but the essence of the Diem Phu incident is escape, survival of the fittest, not pointless sacrifice between wanderers. I'm sure Nantho won't sit idly by with Bui Van Ho's actions, especially tomorrow night, maybe even today. Nantho will step in to stop Bui Van Ho's actions. So basically, you don't need to actively cause trouble for Bui Van Ho. Just relax, wait for the event to be adjusted, and that's it." Listening, Lydian slowly spoke. "If it's just if, then what about Nantho you mentioned? If Nantho isn't a match for Bui Van Ho, what should we do?" The man thought for a moment. Maybe that's not possible. Although he doesn't have Diem Phu inheritance, Nantho's combat skills are probably slightly higher than other wanderers. Plus years of managing their results, there's no reason he can't keep the wanderers in line for a few days. But even so, you don't need to worry. The wanderers in this event are quite talented, and there's a leading wanderer named Vosen. His power is almost at level 9, and he's quite arrogant. Given his personality, he definitely won't allow Bui Van Ho to take advantage. Instead of chasing and killing you, he'll cause trouble for Bui Van Ho first." Lydian shrugged and shook his head. "If you have nothing else to say, then please step aside." The man looked surprised at Lydian's serious face and said enthusiastically, "Oh, this serious person, huh? Considering your current situation, that's not good. Take 2 steps back. Of course, if you want to fight, I don't mind." The man switched to a serious tone, "Because you don't believe my words." Lydian stopped and said, No, I completely trust you, but the situation doesn't look as optimistic as you predicted." Watching Lydian gradually fade away, the hesitant man called out loudly, "Hey, serious guy, hey! Considering your current situation, that's not good." Meanwhile, on some unnamed island, a young man with an umbrella spoke to the empty sea. In an escape and murder case, he had discovered traces of Tuffum. The sea grunted in response. "What does it have to do with us?" shouted the other man. The investigation leader pursued and discovered the reason behind Tuffum's people infiltrating. The result of Diem Phu is the vitality of self-regeneration. The sea surged powerfully, white waves rising. The absent-minded Tavian scolded for a moment of foolishness. The man on the shore said, "This event is related to Diem." Hearing this, he raised his hand to his chin and asked, "Who is Diem?" Turning back to Diem at that moment, the man led Diem and Danong to Dong Duong Tower in Yendo Fortress. Along the way, he continuously explained about culinary groups. Dong Duong Tower was where he apprenticed, only missing the first Sundong 3 nights. This Dong Duong Tower was virtuous and intact. Arriving at Diem's kitchen, leaning on the table, he observed the busy man. "It's not even midnight yet. Are you preparing a meal? How can we help?" The man didn't respond immediately. After a moment of silent observation of the kitchen, he spoke. "I used to be Nguyen Loi, disciple of Don Kidao. The aspect of capability is decided at the right moment, then handed over to others. I reluctantly seized it, leaving one life behind. The fate of NDT0 changes to dining. Reluctance can still be exerted. Diem Phu, how you seize and gain from me is also quite normal." Diem crossed his arms and said, "So you still believe in the revival of Dong Sun? There is still some resilience in you. What are you doing here?" asked Danuan, turning the food in the pan. "This dish is called Song Thui Stir-Fried, the main skill of Quoc Dan. There's not much left." The hot oil splattered, emitting a red glow into the air. The enticing aroma made Danuang swallow involuntarily as the scent spread. The night air suddenly became eerie. Outside the door, they heard murmurs. Diem looked worried. Suddenly, a horde of demons pounded on the windows, mouths clamoring for the scent. Chaitudeo suddenly said, "Don't go outside. Don't let anything in here." Diem analyzed. The 2 demonic souls Danuang wanted have arrived. Then, despite the resistance of that person, Diem signaled to reassure Danuang, then stepped out of the shop. The cold wind blew through the deserted shop. Diem stood pensive at the door. Suddenly, from the end of the street, the sound of a gong echoed, guarding the night vigil. Gradually, a large figure with buffalo horns and pigtail clothes appeared in front of Diem. In the kitchen, the man's voice echoed, "The path of cooking is like a treasure in the fire. It has aged before it could be reborn." Diem lost focus for a moment as the giant shadow rushed towards him, its rough, muscular black arm grabbing him. Diem was kicked away instantly, crashing heavily into the door behind him. The giant was also kicked away, sprawling on the stone path, motionless. At that moment, Diem wasn't unscathed. Some ribs were broken, but fortunately, his physical condition remained strong, and the wounds healed quickly. The other man fell heavily, but the cold wind outside still blew incessantly. The dim green candlelight drifted past. A slender girl carrying a faint green candle approached slowly. What caught Diem's attention was the embroidered pink shoes under her feet. Just now, a beautiful girl holding a faint candle came to Diem's face. Her watery eyes looked at him tenderly and said, "Master, the little girl wishes you all the best." Diem looked coldly at the girl, cutting off her words, "You came uninvited. It's not a good habit." The girl remained silent, her face showing pity. Slowly, she extended the candle to Diem with her right hand. Immediately alert, Diem recoiled. The Dark King's pawn shot straight at the girl's neck, but she reacted quickly, leaning back to avoid it. Seeing this, Diem kicked the girl away, and she fell, the candle slipping from her hand. Diem didn't say a word, but as soon as the candle went out, a strong wind blew from behind him, and the sound of the waves echoed from the end of the room. Before he could react, Diem saw the giant wave of blood towering right in front of him, the foul smell almost making him faint. He couldn't help but scream out several curses, substituting for Zininha. At this moment, Danuang rushed out the door towards Diem, shouting, "The general is an illusion." Hearing Danuang's voice, Diem calmed down. He regained his composure and immediately threw 2 energy balls from space, causing an explosion upon impact. The 2 grenades drew a circular arc, heading straight towards the giant blood wave ahead. The deafening explosion rang in their ears, and the blood wave was instantly dispersed, disappearing. In its place, several grotesque black creatures hovered in the air, mouths bearing sharp teeth. They charged towards Diem's neck. The Honglong sword appeared, its bright light illuminating the surroundings like a flowing silver curtain, tearing through the darkness. It knocked the shadow down to the ground, and the entire street once again fell into a terrifying silence. Lydium wiped the sweat from his forehead, silently thinking that he had overcome this wave of attack. Danwang's hands were weakening, and many energies flowed out from the demon's body. Within a few breaths, Danwang had absorbed them all. At this moment, a voice echoed from inside the kitchen. "It's almost ready." Seeing that Danwang was fine, Lydium smiled. "This meal of yours is not easy to come by." Suddenly, the cold wind howled again, and a multitude of blurry spirits appeared, gathering towards the restaurant. The scene of hungry demons fighting for food emerged. Lydium looked at the endless stream of spirits, directly activating the Banishing 100 Demons technique. A fierce and terrifying aura emanated from him, tearing through the air like a primal beast, causing countless horrifying souls to flee in panic. Their greenish faces wailed in agony. Danwang raised both hands to the center, and countless vengeful spirits and negative energies slowly converged, turning into a glowing purple sphere. At this moment, the notification system sounded. Chaos energy contained within the Hongman tattoo has been depleted. You have lost the state of 100 demons retreat. Accelerate wound healing speed by 20%. Immunity to damage from stray bullets increased by 30%. You can now enter any Diem Phu to search for chaos energy or similar hostile energies to recharge the tattoo. Different consciousnesses will yield different effects for your tattoo. Lydium sighed. Just used it twice. This event is quite exhausting. Together with Danwang, they entered the kitchen. Chitiu Tre was holding a plate of delicious food, looking at Lydium. "It seems that you still have the ability of 100 demons retreat." Lydium and Danwang looked down at the plate of food in his hands. Chitiu Tre placed the plate in front of Lydium and Danwang, inviting them. Their eyes sparkled. Even in the dim light of falling snow, the presence of the Devil's Bane was palpable. Lydium sighed and said, "It's really delicious food." At the same time, the notification system canceled the mute state of Lydium. He stood up and looked at the wounded Toto. "Based on what you said, you seem to be a trusted subordinate of the 9 worlds. Yendo here, where she might be taken, has only Non-Yuang Temple. Today, we're fighting in Minlang, and I'll take both of you to Non-Yuang Temple first. Let's bypass Toto for now." The man hugged Lydium's thigh and said, "There's still time to come back. Wait for me to settle things with Wivanho, and you'll finish your fight over there. Let's meet at Non-Yuang Temple." Chitiu Tre asked in astonishment, "How do you know that we're fighting at Minlang today? And have you met Buivanho?" Based on his guess, Lydium turned back and smiled briefly. After knowing that Lydium met Buivanho, the man decided to go with him to Non-Yuang Temple. Chitiu Tre nodded confidently. "The power of my legs is well known, isn't it?" Lydium said nothing, summoning the martial arts battle armor and placing Toto behind him. They flew as fast as lightning. The man was surprised, his jaw dropped, and he was swept away by the wind, screaming. The sound of the engine of the battle armor echoed throughout the street, and he was left behind, clinging to the railing, his face pale. Lydium didn't stop, pushing Toto forward. His face was slightly flushed, and they soon reached the gate of Non-Yuang Temple. The golden doors closed behind them, and the scent of incense filled the air. In the hall, on both sides, were statues of revered deities, akin to the scene at the Hang Vu Hang Cat Fang. Danwang stepped forward, clasping his hands and bowing to the statue of Van Tiu Nong Nong. But when he saw the mud statue next to it, his eyes became dull. It was the girl holding the jade vase he met that night in the illusory shop. Lydium gently placed Toto down, thinking, "It's past 10 o'clock now. The temple is probably closed. Yet the gates are still open, and there's no one here. It's strange. And why didn't we meet anyone on the way here?" Just then, a roaring sound echoed. Chitiu Tre held his chest, breathing heavily. Lydium approached to comfort him, patting his back as he caught his breath. Moments later, they still had another difficult battle ahead. Danwang chuckled at Lydium's actions, knowing that he knew how to heal Toto here. Chitiu Tre regained his breath and replied, "There was a strange person I chased here, a child's head thrown ahead. The person in front didn't know why he ran here. Just a few minutes later, he calmly left. At that moment, I jumped up to look over the wall and saw the temple filled with white light. There was a woman about 25 or 26 years old standing inside. She glanced at me and did nothing. Lydium teased, "You patiently waited outside without going in to see, huh? Who knows, you might have found a legendary artifact." Chitiutra ignored Lydium's jest and suggested to Danamon, "We should light some incense for this temple. With both of you by your side, one being a demon healer and the other a mountain god, the negotiations with them would be much more reliable than doing it yourself." Danawong nodded in agreement with the idea. Lydium didn't object and asked Chitiutra if he saw anyone when he arrived. Not hearing an answer, Lydium felt something was off. He suggested to Danawong to keep 2 Todos to report in case of any surprises, but Danawong firmly rejected the idea. He glanced at the Todo in the wreckage and said, "Wait for your return, and I'll definitely give you an active spirit vessel." Lydium chuckled, patting Chitiutra's shoulder. "Let's go." The two walked out together, with Danawong looking at the departing vehicle and then finally speaking, "He's gone now. Besides, you're seriously injured. Even if you wake up, your family will still have to carry you on their backs. Why play such petty tricks?" Toto propped himself up on the rubble with both hands, slowly sitting up. He didn't answer Danawong's question, but instead asked back, "Nepson, aren't you supposed to live on the mountain? Why are you accompanying Danawong now?" Looking at his beautiful nails, she remarked, "The outside world is so interesting. I'm curious why you're afraid to open your eyes. Is it because you're afraid Lydium will blame you for being incompetent?" Toto seemed like she wanted to say something, but her tone was somewhat disappointed. "You had to spend so much effort and blood to summon me, and even gave me the dragon scales. And what's the result? A battle where I got injured without explanation. And I couldn't help but also involved you." Danawong glanced at Toto with a slightly annoyed expression. "Honestly, I feel like you're overthinking things. Honestly, I'm not interested in playing jealousy games with you." Ignoring Danawong, Toto suddenly broke the silence between them. "There are still people alive here. At the 13 Heavenly Daolang, Lydium and Chitiutra are waiting for Buivanho's appearance." Time passed every second and minute. Chitiutra sat beside him, suddenly stood up and told Lydium, "My mission has been issued." Lydium suddenly understood that it was already 11:30, but he still hadn't received the mission from the system. At this moment, the system notification sounded, announcing that the opponent had died. Seeing the smile on Lydium's face, Chitiutra couldn't help but ask if it was still confidential. Lydium didn't hide it and answered straightforwardly, "Buivanho is dead." Chitiutra was stunned, then elated. "Then we can go back." But when they tried to leave, they found that they couldn't exit the Diem Phu. He panicked, but Lydium's mood was complicated. Although he had only met Buivanho once, the image of his handsome yet cruel face still haunted him. He sighed, murmuring, "So, I died first, huh? The heavenly Tao is not something that 2 people can cover up. Until the last minute, no one knows who killed whom. The close ones may fall, like Nutu, and the extraordinary ones may rise, like Chithaumientu Hobi. In the end, it's just that." He regained his composure and told Chitiutra, "Let's go to your location. You'll attack head-on, while I ambush unexpectedly." Chitiutra looked at Lydium with disdain. "I know you're practical, but I didn't expect you to be this practical. Are we martial arts instructors now?" Lydium didn't hide anything and summoned the battle armor. He told Chitiutra to get on, but he refused. "I can handle it myself. If you're not at ease, those 2 girls can handle it." Lydium smiled when the man walked away. Lydium shouted after his retreating figure, "If you're also dead, where should I go? Let's find the 5 Diem Phu spots to compensate." Lydium summoned the battle armor and let it rush ahead on the empty road. He didn't know how Buivanho died or what the event was about, why it was still life and death. After today's round, there were only 14 travelers left, including him. If they didn't find the sacred sign, this event might only have 1 or 2 survivors. Nantho, the wandering monsters, could have killed Buivanho, but Yemsuan Lin was the most likely suspect. It seemed that Nantho was the most likely suspect. Suddenly, Diem widened her eyes in mockery, then slammed on the brakes of her battle chariot. The road ahead seemed to have been erased by an eraser, leaving only a blank, silent space. At this moment, the system's voice rang out, alerting that someone had detected the phenomenon of falling fruit to prevent any unnecessary damage. Diem, astonished, looked at the scene before her. She threw a stone forward, and as it touched the blank area, it immediately vanished. Diem, cold-hearted, looked at the street gradually being covered in white. Indeed, it was dangerous. She turned her battle chariot back towards Lao, heading towards the desert. Midnight arrived, and countless monsters appeared on the streets. Indo's invisible erasure continued unchecked, as if wanting to turn this world into a blank sheet of paper. Countless anonymous creatures were gradually erased. At Fangyevian, an old man with a skull-like appearance shouted at Kavothuam, whose surname was Boy. He couldn't bring back the 10 people to repay the debt they owed. Kavothuam's fate was already sealed. There was no need for further discussion. Kavothuam sneered, inviting everyone in the palace, and those at the end of the alley to come forward, wanting to directly calculate everything clearly. They shouldn't talk behind his back. The man with the hat on the opposite side chuckled at Kavothuam's words, indicating they naturally believed him. If not for that divine decree, they wouldn't have followed him. The conversation buzzed, but all with bloodthirsty eyes. Suddenly, a white dot stopped in front of the demon girl. She curiously touched it with her finger, and the white color engulfed her, then spread across the street, effortlessly erasing everything. The demon minions were easily wiped out in the electric law domain. Chim Dukchin asked, "Where's little Tuvanko?" Tovianchu replied, "She's still unconscious." Chim Dukchin took a sip of white liquid. On the cup were written 4 characters. "Heaven and earth are useless." He asked, "So, what if she wakes up? How do you explain to her?" Tovianchu scratched his head, saying he would say his wife was going through a difficult period, so ask him. Chim Dukchin put the cup down, smiling bitterly. "Vianchu, you're still as rude as ever." Vianchu laughed and then turned serious, asking if the event to discover the whereabouts of the Common Realm's authority was real or fake. Chim Dukchin nodded, confirming its authenticity, though only about 8 or 9 parts of it were real out of 10. Which one was real in the worst-case scenario? Chim Dukchin pondered, meeting love, hatred, affection, or parting without reunification. Even though Tavianchu remained silent for a long time, not saying a word, Chim Dukchin could only shake his head helplessly and sigh. "Sooner or later, you'll die at the hands of Tuvanko." At this moment, behind the palace, figures of various heights entered. First was a tall, elegant woman with clear features who spoke in the old rules, representing the palace lord. Next was a boy in a red tie and white grass-like clothes who introduced himself as Hekanthi, representing the demon lord in this period. Lastly, an old man in uniform spoke, stating that at least 6 owners were needed to participate, and one was still missing. Taovianchu coughed lightly. Truku said he could fully represent his opinion. The old man remained silent for a moment, then looked at Tovianchu. Before Taovianchu could respond, Chim Dukchin interrupted, pointing out that she was busy organizing the lower-level operations and was ready to relinquish all authority related to Diem Phu's activities. There was no need to mention it anymore. Everyone knew. Since they too opposed Tufam 2 years ago, Tufam's power only existed nominally, with the old owner disappearing. But 6 hours ago, the phenomenon of large-scale fruit falling occurred, and Tufam was involved in the Diem Phu event. As the person responsible for investigating Diem Phu, Taovianchu couldn't avoid responsibility. When investigating the cause, he found that the main culprit was Tuvanko, who exploited the title of Palace Lord to secretly trade personal information of lower-level operatives and interfere with Diem Phu's normal operations. This created a vulnerability for Tufam's people. Now the entire palace was silent. After a long while, the Palace Lord spoke softly, asking if everyone knew about this. Chim Dukchin tightened the paper cup in his hand. This thing once again covered for Tuvanko. Then the image switched back to Yendo. Diem pushed the temple door open, seeing Danuan and Toto cooking bone porridge. Seeing Diem return, Toto was happy, while Danong glanced over from the side, signaling Li Diem to be careful. Li Diem nodded and glanced over to the other side where a middle-aged man was squatting, eating hot porridge.